And it is Zachary Wilson, quarterback of BYU. This is a guy that I'm extremely excited about, man. A lot of people early in the season, when I had no clue who this kid was telling me about him, especially a lot of Washington fans. They were enamored with this kid. And I didn't know who he was, Adam from Eve. I watched the game earlier this season. He lit somebody up. It was Houston. Come from behind victory. They were down 28-16. He rallies them back. He was outstanding in the game. And I was like, pretty damn impressive. That's when Washington fans thought we were going to have a top 10 pick. I told them we weren't. And that's also when they were hoping that this kid would go under the radar and you'd be able to sneak him at 9 or 10 or 13. It's not happening. All right, this kid's coming off the board. He could easily go 1 to Jacksonville. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Let's talk about why he could potentially go number 1 overall in this draft. Elite arm talent is the first strength. And to me, he's got the strongest arm in this draft, and it's not even close. I don't think anybody really comes close to his ability to sling the football. I mean, it's literally a flick of the wrist, and the football is going 55 yards in the air with Zach Wilson. So I think that his talent in terms of his arm is off the charts. Athleticism and elusiveness. You know, it was funny because when people were describing him to me, the first name that would rattle off their tongue is Kyler Murray. And I said to myself, I never said this to anybody else, don't do that. Don't disrespect Kyler Murray like that. His quickness is ridiculous. It's off the charts. And I doubt this white boy is going to be able to match that. I was wrong. Okay. He's not as quick as Kyler Murray, but he's not that damn far off. And he's a lot more elusive than I thought he was going to be. So I was wrong in that department. He definitely can move, and he can make people miss. So that was a shock to the senses for me. Really impressed with his ability to run, but also make people miss in space. Athletic arrogance. I love it. Like the best of the best, they know they're better, and they're not afraid to let you know that they're better. Just by the way they carry themselves, with the swag that they play with. He's one of those guys that walks around and plays on the field like his shit don't stink. And that's the kind of guy you want. You want a guy that's athletically arrogant. All right. And he's got a lot of that. You know, where he's scoring a touchdown and he's jumping in the end zone and he's finger rolling it, or he's rolling out of the pocket, guys trying to tackle him. He jumps in the air. He doesn't have to jump. He's showing off. He doesn't have to leave his feet to throw it 25 yards on a frozen rope, but he does. Because he's got that athletic arrogance. Multiple arm slots and quick release. Those are winners at the next level, man. You know, when you can throw it lightning quick. Again, Jimmy Garoppolo would be out of the league if he did not have a lightning quick release. It's what saves him a lot of times. He's slow to progress. He doesn't get the football where it needs to go in timing and rhythm of the play a lot of times. But what saves Jimmy Garoppolo's ass is that he's got one of the quickest releases in the NFL. Zach Wilson has that exact same thing, except he actually is within the timing and rhythm of the play. He knows where he's supposed to go. And he can also, much like a Patrick Mahomes or Matthew Stafford, he can, and Aaron Rodgers, he can get it to you, give it to you in a multitude of ways from different arm slots. So again, that makes him that much harder to defend. Eye manipulation and student of the game. So one of the things I was really impressed to learn is that this guy's a football junkie. You know, I know some of you are going to laugh when I say this, but a fellow BYU quarterback by the name of John Beck was one of his mentors. John Beck, if you're a Washington fan, it's laughable, I know, but John Beck still made it to the NFL. And we see this all the time with these quarterback gurus. Like, you know, Carson Palmer's brother, Jordan, is a quarterback guru. He made it to the NFL, but he wasn't any good at the NFL level. But yet everybody goes to him to help enhance their draft stock. to work on some of the mechanics and fundamentals of the game at the quarterback position. Same thing could be said for John Beck, But not only John Beck, I'll take it a step further. He has made great friends with Drew Brees. Like, he is really dialed in with Drew Brees. They've watched film together. This guy is a football junkie, which is what you want at the quarterback position. So he's doing things from an eye manipulation standpoint that not many guys come into the league doing. That's some stuff that you usually don't get until you're 2-3 years into the league. Looking off that safety or looking off that underneath defender because you got a slant on the backside. That safety's watching your eyes. So you're going to look front side knowing you're throwing the slant backside. Just to open up that little bit of space. There's a robber. You've already identified that safety's coming down. He wants to rob. Okay? So instead of you staring it down and taking the robber to the football so he can pick it off, you stare front side and you come backside. And you see it with him time and time again. And you're just like, man, this kid gets it. He gets it because he's a student of the game. Progress, he processes and progresses really well. You see his head go from 1 to 2 to 3, and he gets it to his third option. You see his head go from 1 to 2 to 3. I'm going to get it to my check down. You see him analyzing the defense quickly. 1, 2, 3, ball out. And so you know that this guy knows what he's supposed to do, where he's supposed to go with the football. Pocket poise and accuracy at all levels. He's a guy that when things are crumbling around him, he doesn't have to work from a clean pocket. If the pocket's dirty, he can negotiate it. If he has to get outside the pocket, he can. If he's got to step up in the pocket, if he's got to slide left, or if he's got to slide up or slide right slightly just to create that extra fraction of a second, he can do it. So to me, his poise in the pocket is elite. His accuracy is off the charts. The guy completed it at a 73.5% clip. And again, if you watched him, a lot of these passes are down the field. These aren't nickel and dimers, folks. Okay? He's pulling out the big bills and he's chucking it deep and he's completing it at over 73%. 33 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. The guy was ridiculous this season. So we know that this guy can get it at all levels. And he's got the poise that you're looking for. But to me, what separates him from just about everybody else in the draft at the quarterback position is him being a dynamic playmaker. The thing that gets you excited about Zach Wilson, which if Jacksonville were to draft him 1 overall, I wouldn't be mad about, is because he's a dynamic playmaker. He's Josh Allen. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's Kyler Murray. He's Aaron Rodgers in his prime. He's one of those players that can take a broken play that looks like it's going to be a bad play, and he turns bad plays into net gain plays, okay? He turns it into an even play. It was bad, free hitter coming off the edge, makes him miss, and picks up 3 yards. That should have been a loss of 6. He takes good plays, and he makes them great plays. He takes great plays and makes them legendary. That's the kind of playmaking ability he has, okay? And so when you watch him, whether it's with his legs or with his arms, you say, that's what today's NFL looks like. That's what Mahomes looks like. That's what Kyler Murray looks like. That's what Russell Wilson looks like. That's what Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, that's what the best in the business look like. They look like Zach Wilson. Weaknesses. Injury history. You can't overlook these things. Why haven't I heard of Zach Wilson before this year? Not because he played at BYU. I knew of Trey Lance and he played at North Dakota State. Why didn't I know about Zach Wilson? Because he's been dealing with injuries. He missed 8 games over the last 2 seasons. His only full season playing all of his team's games was 2020, this past year. Before that, it was 9 games. The year before that, in 18, it was 9 games. This is a guy that has had shoulder surgery in 2018. That same shoulder bothered him in 2019. And he had a fractured thumb in 2019 to go along with shoulder issues in 19. So this is a guy with a history of injuries. You just need to keep that in mind. Again, I'm not telling you to take him off your board, or I'm not telling you to knock him. I'm just telling you, make a mental note of that. Make sure that your medical staff is able to evaluate him. Everything looks good. Everything checks out, because this is a guy with an injury history that you cannot ignore. Then you get to the next weakness. When to say when. All right. Friends know when to say when. Okay. This was one of my big issues with Joe Burrow last year. One of my biggest knocks on Joe Burrow is he didn't know when to say when. He didn't know when a play was over. When the defense won, he always wanted to still find a way. That's the Carson Wentz syndrome. When a play is over and the defense won, you just got to tip your cap and say, hey, you got me on this one. I'll get you next time. Carson Wentz got beat up last year because he didn't know when to say when. When Joe Burrow made mistakes at LSU, it was because he didn't know when to say when. When Josh Allen makes mistakes, takes a 21-yard sack. When Josh Allen gets hit and fumbles 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage like he did against the Indianapolis Colts in Wild Card Weekend, it's when he doesn't know when to say when. Sometimes you get that with Zach Wilson. And that's what happens a lot of times. Same thing with Russell Wilson. That's what happens when you have a dynamic playmaker. They don't know when to shut it off sometimes. And so you'll have an 11-yard sack. You'll have a 16-yard sack. It'll be 2nd and 4, and now it's 3rd and 20. He just took a 16-yard sack because he didn't want to give up on the play. And so every now and again, you're like, hey, Zach, just get rid of it, bruh. He'll get better at that. Will force balls into tight spaces, okay? Look, when you've got the kind of arm that he has, you're going to try to fit some balls where they don't belong. Pause. However, what I don't like about that, because a lot of times when you think about quarterbacks trying to fit the ball in tight spaces, you think about interceptions. Oh, man, safety's going to pick it off. Oh, man, it's cover 2. He's trying to fit it in the honey hole. You got a corner sagging underneath that route, pick it off. Nah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about him getting his receivers' blocks knocked off. I mean, clean off. Heads knocked off of shoulders. There's only so many times you can put your receivers and teammates at risk before they start getting pissed off at you. He's got to understand, bruh, that 9-yard gain ain't worth your receiver taking that kind of hit that you're about to force him to take to try to catch this football. Don't do that. You're better than that. I'd rather you tuck and run it for 4 than you try to zing it in there and the linebacker's waiting on this guy and he gets crushed and it's incomplete. Don't do that. I watched at least 3 different instances where he got one of his guys crushed. I mean, decapitated. He's got to be better than that. And then finally, the reason he's not number 1 for me, this is the only reason he's not number 1. It's not the injuries. It's not knowing when to say when and him not knowing when to do that. It's not him forcing balls into tight spaces. It's the Utah game in 2019 and it's Coastal Carolina in 2020. That's why he's not my number 1 quarterback. Because my number 1 quarterback in those types of games rose to the occasion. We've seen him do it. I know he can do it. He didn't do it against LSU. I think that was his worst game. Was Trevor Lawrence's worst game. Was against LSU in 2019 in the national championship game. And he wasn't great against Ohio State in a playoff game. He wasn't terrible. But I know what he can do. I watched him bring his team back from the dead against Ohio State in a game they were getting drubbed in and should have been getting blown out in a playoff game in the Orange Bowl in 2019. I watched him as a freshman systematically take apart Alabama's defense. I know what he's capable of. I cannot say the same for Zach Wilson. When he saw NFL caliber defenses, he struggled. And when teams were physical with him, Coastal Carolina bullied him. They were physical with him. They hit him during the play. They hit him after the play. They were in his face. He wasn't comfortable. It got to him. You could tell. But the 2019 game against Utah is the one that stuck out for me. Because even against Coastal Carolina, he still had him in the game late with a chance to win it. The Utah game in 2019 was awful. And the reason I bring that up is because two of his worst games of his collegiate career came against Utah, once in 2018 and once in 2019. But the one in 2019 in particular was the one that jumped off the screen at me, because you got to understand, Utah essentially had an NFL defense in 2019. You know, Leki Fotu, their defensive tackle, draft pick last year. Their safety was drafted, Julian Blackmon, one of the better young safeties in the league already after one season. He was tremendous for the Colts. The corner that Chicago took, I forgot his name, but the corner was drafted in the second. Jalen Johnson was drafted in the second round for Chicago off that Utah defense. You got the edge rusher that Dallas took in the 5th round. I think I might be forgetting one more guy off that Utah defense, but they were loaded. I mean, it was an NFL caliber defense, and he struggled. He threw 2 pick sixes to my count. I sat there, I watched this game. He should have thrown 4 interceptions. 2 of them were dropped. The 2 he did throw, both went to the house. Bring, bring, house call. He was awful in that game. I think he completed it at less than 50%. He struggled. Now, that was 2019. I don't know if the 2020 version of Zach Wilson performs as poorly as he did. I just know that was an NFL caliber defense, and he struggled. And I know that Coastal Carolina, in his biggest game of his career, he struggled, he was roughed up, and he didn't lead his team to a victory. So because of that, I can't elevate him over a guy that I know is capable in those situations. But I'd spend the number 1 pick on Zach Wilson in a heartbeat. He's a top 5 pick in my estimation. That's the way I project him. He's going to go number 2 to the Jets, I believe, if not 1 to the Jaguars. And my comp for him, and I didn't make a mistake here, he's Kyler Mahomes. He's Kyler Mahomes. That's my comp. You know, I wanted to just go Deshaun Watson, but he's not Deshaun Watson. He's next level because he can make you miss in space, and he's more dynamic as a thrower of the football than Deshaun Watson. He's Kyler Mahomes. He's a mixture of both of those guys. Is he better than those guys? I don't know. You know, we'll see. But I can tell you one thing. He's got those attributes in him. And that's why Jacksonville has a decision to make. And that's why you're hearing so many people talk about there's a decision to be made at 1. You know how I am. Don't believe the hype. You know what I like to say this time of the year? Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. But there's a little bit of credence to this when it applies to Zach Wilson.
Louie.